Viewing images of glory in my mind at enlistment. Overhead a flapping red, white, and blue filling the distance. A grand divide between myself and conscientious convictions or belief systems that stop people from killing over religion. I was young and I was out of options in my mind. It was supposed to be fun, my obligations ill-defined. I'd either want to take charge with a gun back in my mind. Without college or riches, no dreams to realize. Well, I never have the ladder the Marines to get me the first. Ain't nothing better than dress blues and one spit in this verse. You see the world paying to the GI Bill, fat in the purse. My recruiter made it sound simple, a play hit well rehearsed. Forever cursed to the ones who get young innocent signatures under the guise of from God and country their honor diminishes. Rebuilt a standing army when against the founders' wishes. Now free democracy conducts war games and peacekeeping missions. Ironic hypocrisy.
Falling tears, raindrops from your eyes. Falling rain, let it fall.
I scored high on my entrance exams on ASVAB and chose the 0341 with guaranteed Hawaii track. Graduated basic, now MOS school's where I'm at. I'm more than a man with a 35-pound gun on my back. Plus my rifle 8 pounds, 65-pound pack. I'm 18, weigh a $195 and feel jacked. 108 pounds on my back, a boot marine and Cadillacs. A short 20-mile hump, 4 quarts in my flat. After 7 miles, swearing my right foot cracked. I'm an E1, tell my sergeant I think it snapped. He's an E5, shouts private, don't beat me crap. You got 2 feet, compensate and don't fall back. After 4 more miles, my left foot joins in the act. Only 9 more to go, I walked through all, that's a fact. 1 certificate for intestinal fortitude, not having shat. And 3 months healing, lost Hawaii to Guantanamo, rap.
Sergeant David Twa, who I met in 6th grade. Dress greens, patent leather, and a high top fade. My mind was made up, I couldn't wait to grow up so I could sign up, man up, and stop the corrupt. A champion for God and country. Just wait till they get a load of me, an unstoppable PFC. Private first class, polished brass. I wanted to kill all the black pajamas that were hiding in the grass. But with no war in sight, my plight to fight never took flight. So I trained during the day and got drunk at night. Set my sights on all types of glory. Fast forward to Afghanistan, totally different story. IEDs, enemies, no front line to see. 80 pounds of gear in the desert, I could hardly breathe. Blood-stained fatigues, very many colleagues sent home to the VA to live with PTSD. Every day recruiters go to inner cities and ask for
volunteers. Raindrops from your eyes. Falling rain, let it fall.
I never let my children volunteer for the military to make the same mistakes as I did these days could be deadly. If they're drafted with Dodgers, my go back stay ready. I support Manning and Snowden. You know where this country's heading. Global tyrant, hegemonic, bully police force, demonic practice, virgin sacrifice, bloodlust. All your wars valuing corporations over people. This is sick worship by objects and pure evil. Material desires get more attention than spiritual benefits are based on profits. Complaints aren't given view. Arms manufacture supply both sides of conflicts. Do you have a problem with any of these statements or doubt their truth? I'm a father and a veteran, and I stand for peace. Julian Assange against our commanders-in-chief. But it's hard to be better when daily demands compete. I'm not ignoring the slaughter, I'm just trying to eat like you.
Falling tears, raindrops from your eyes. Falling rain, let it fall.
Peace and plenty, peace and power. Thank you for joining us today, this 20th day of January 2021, Inauguration Day. Who can avoid it? Who can't talk about it? Everybody's watching it. It's the topic on everybody's mind, or is it? It's I haven't watched any of the inauguration. If you've watched it, that's beautiful for you. I hope it was a wonderful experience. And I hope that they follow through on all the beautiful promises that they are making for the people. Today, we have an Afghanistan and Iraq war veteran in the place to be, Mr. Will Griffin. He is the founder of the Peace Report. He is a very special individual. I know him through a personal experience. We went to Okinawa together and shared almost 2 weeks in this pristine, beautiful land being destroyed by our U.S. military-industrial complex. And I got to get to know him a lot better. And so we're going to talk with him today about this state of affairs that our country's in, where it's all up in the air what might happen on Inauguration Day. And we know that we are here on occupied land in these United States of America. And this election is the 46th, I guess, in a long line of successions that have continued to displace people of color and indigenous people and LGBTQ communities and marginalized communities across the board. So today should be a very special talk as we talk with a brother who is all about people's revolution. So I welcome Will Smith to the stream, and thank you for being here with us. And I'll just, like we always do, organically check in. How are you feeling? How are you taking the events of the day? Thank you for being with us.
Okay.
Yes, Will.
Yeah,
How are you
feeling?
feeling? How are you feeling? Like no pre-planned question. How are you feeling, Will?
Yeah. Well, one, thank you. I'm happy to be back here. Miles, yes, it's great to see you again. Hope you, Mike, and Natasha are doing well and staying safe, as well as everyone watching during these crazy times. Checking in. I think I'm good. I've been staying busy, staying healthy, keeping my mind focused, exercising both my mind and my body. Yeah, I think I'm doing pretty good for all things considered.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So, wow, what crazy times. The inauguration happened today, and so far the only thing I've taken away from it is that Trump told everybody to have a nice life, and I thought that was about the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. He said, "Have a nice life." so whatever. It is what it is. Try and find some silver lining and some humor and comedy and all this thing. Yeah, same over here. We're doing okay. How are you doing, Miss Natasha?
I'm doing good. I am working through some tech difficulties, but listen, if you can hear my voice, I am, it's good to be here with y'all on a day like today, because a lot of things came up for me while, pomp and circumstance is, fascinating, I guess. I also just, kind of thought about the policies and the needed organizing that will have to happen in order to, fully appreciate and welcome this new administration. I think that COVID is putting us, it's like a window or a mirror, really, up to the problems that the least of us have had and struggled with for so long. And now as we see more of our neighbors, just kind of like continuing to struggle, and whether or not, we have housing or financial insecurity, how that's playing out on a personal level, I think it's really good to have spaces like this to talk about. Again, that's what kind of came up for me today. So I'm excited. I'm glad to have Will back in the seat so we can talk about, what we're going to talk about. So I'll get my video up here and I'll be joining y'all here in a moment.
Fair enough.
So the reason I didn't say we're going to talk about the new administration is because I know that Will doesn't really care about. I assume that Will doesn't care about the new administration. So I shouldn't have made the assumption.
No, that's cool. I could talk on it for a second if you want.
I figure that you and Mike have more planned this out, and I don't want to be the one in the you know what I'm saying, in the lead role with you, brother.
Yeah, so let me just say this. I know changing the presidency from Trump to Biden will have significant impacts on some people in this country, and we should acknowledge that and see that, right? If he gives certain people citizenship in this country to get them more access to certain things, that's a significant change in that person's life, right? But in the end and in the long run, both Biden, both Trump, both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are the class enemies of the working class people and the overwhelming majority of people around the world that are suffering under US imperialism. And therefore, exchanging one class enemy for another class enemy, to me, is not progress. And you know what? I just saw this interview with Malcolm X when he was asked about what is progress. And he said, you know what? When you have a knife in my back that's 6 inches in and you pull it out 3 inches out, that's not progress. He's like, in fact, progress is getting the knife out and healing that wound. That's progress. So what we have here is going from a 6-inch stab to a 3-inch stab with the knife still in the back. And then on top of that, we, like, as Malcolm X said, people don't even acknowledge the knife is there. So, I mean, and this isn't like, this isn't like I would argue that this is not my subjective position. This is the actual conditions of this country, that we are in a class antagonistic contradiction with people, the ruling class, right? Occupy gave us that 1%, 99%, right? They are still in power. Is Biden, Biden's, as far as the incarceral state, we got to watch out for what Biden's going to do with that. Supporting the wars overseas, what is he going to do with that? There are a lot of things that other people who may benefit from some of Biden's policies, other people are not going to benefit from. And it may even become worse, right? So are we just switching from one thing to another thing that is both negative, harmful? But as Ms. Natasha said, it does change a little bit about how we can organize, like, with and against this administration. And those subtle differences is something that we do have to acknowledge, interpret and organize around, and build strategies and tactics around as well.
Will, do you feel that the look and the sound of the administration makes a difference in the ability of organizers to gather people, to galvanize, and and even in people who don't consider themselves organizers, for them to become involved or interested? Do you feel like right now people are just going to feel like they've won something? Or is it a danger to, what's the danger now in this time?
Yeah. So, oh man, so many things to say on that front. Yeah, absolutely. Racism has been defeated. Fascism has been defeated, right? This is what people think when they say Biden. Literally, there's this tweet, I forget by who, and they said, we toppled a dictator, right? We toppled Trump. And someone retweeted it and said, he finished his 4 years in office. We didn't topple him. But so these liberals love to present this as some type of, like we toppled a dictator, as if we defeated fascism, imperialism, and whatever Trump represented in their eyes. And I draw examples from veteran organizers in the anti-war and anti-imperialist movement when Obama came into office. And, before Obama in 2003 in the Iraq invasion, it was the world's biggest anti-war demonstrations across the world ever, right? Obama came in, promised peace. The peace and anti-war movement virtually died overnight. That when you're posing it, and what did Obama do? He expanded the wars. He increased the military budget. He gave more weapons to weapons manufacturers. So on, check. Imperialists. But people, through that faulty framework of understanding how the society actually operates, believe that they have overcome all of these issues in society, these oppressions or whatever, and wipe our hands clean, go home, and live the American dream. And we also have in this country a severe problem of short attention spans, where we forget that this happened just a decade ago. And so people love to frame it as if this is like a huge victory or not, but you know what? There's still so much more work to be done. And you'll all know I'm a socialist. I want to get to a socialist society so we can start to end these severe, deep oppressions and cuts in our society. We can't do that under the capitalist era, under the capitalist mode of production. We need to do it under socialism. And the only way to do that, there's really like a limited way of getting the socialism, but voting out capitalism, voting out imperialism, voting out fascism, I don't believe that. I've never seen a shred of history of that ever happening.
Will, I got one last question for you. I'll let somebody else take over. Bernie Sanders is now the chair of the House Finance Committee. Do you think so? Like Trump, everything Trump did these past 4 years was a news headline, and they could credit the news cycle could do a lot if they were to make Bernie and Kamala and Biden the news headline every day, no matter what they do. So with Bernie as the head of a finance committee, do you think we could start getting to some? He's a democratic socialist. Could we see a socialist movement happen in Congress? Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I just want to remind people, Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, these famous, communists that were killed and murdered and brutalized in Germany. Well, it was the Social Democrats, just like the Democratic Socialists, that handed these people over to the fascists. And it was the fascists who killed Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, among others, which there was a revolutionary uprising in Germany at this time, right? So what I'm saying is people like Bernie Sanders and who adhere to this type of ideology, which is specifically believing that we can get the socialism through voting out capitalism, these people have been betrayers of the working class historically for over 100 years through in nearly every single country, right? So I would not put my trust in someone who holds up that ideology. And it's actually a disgrace for Bernie Sanders to uphold people like Eugene Debs. He has a famous picture and painting of Eugene Debs in his office. And Eugene Debs wouldn't stand for what Bernie Sanders stands for today. Of course, there'll probably be some doors that will be able to be opened up. You'll get more of these lobbyists from NGOs and nonprofits to have sit down meetings with Bernie Sanders, push him on a little issue here, a little issue there. But ultimately, he is trying to save capitalism. And actually, he's trying to build a welfare state, a stronger welfare state. That is not socialism, right? And there's a very mixed interpretation of what socialism is. And whatever Bernie Sanders is calling socialism, I can guarantee you is not socialism.
Right on. Miss Natasha, you're back. You got the video working. That's good. How you doing over there?
Yeah, we've never really met, so it's nice to meet you here.
Yeah, same here. I was in the audience the last time you were on, so it feels like I knew what to expect from you. And I'm really glad to hear you just say what you said and keep it, as the young folks say, 100. Like these are the types of conversations that I think is like really healthy because, the more that we are learning is that we are not monolithic. And even when we were on active duty, we weren't. We have beliefs. We were raised a certain type of way. And so I think like this dialogue is just kind of healthy. And I think, and what I'm really hopeful for is I think that this is one of those rare opportunities in a generation for people to be able to see so clearly like this is a real opportune time that we have to like really look at ourselves and look externally around like just where the country is, how veterans have played a part in that, and what we can do now to kind of flex our muscle to actively work for peace. And so I'm really curious to hear you talk about those connections, and I'm hoping that you won't shy away from it, because I think it's important for most of our peers and neighbors, don't have a different understanding than most of us, who understand imperialism and capitalism and all of the isms to be what they are. So I think it's important to build parallels while we have this strong apolitical conversation. So good to meet you too, Will.
Yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead, Mike.
No, you got something? Go for it.
I was just going to touch on the idea of a different side of veterans and understanding, and and actually combating that typical mainstream narrative that we hear of veterans. And this is something I actually want to write about more. I actually want to write a book on it. So I've got tons of books lined up that I want to read and dive deep into. The essential theme of it is veterans coming back home from wars and fighting their own government and fighting the ruling class of their own country. That has been since the founding of this country, where you have Shays' Rebellion after the American Revolutionary War, coming back, having an uprising, to the St. Patrick's Battalion, who in the middle of the US-Mexican War joined the Mexican side for various reasons. You have Buffalo Soldiers, especially David Fagan, who left the U.S. side and joined the Philippines in the U.S.-Philippine War. And he was a tactician. He knew how to fight the U.S. government and U.S. military. And there was such a high bounty on his head because he knew all these strategies. And he was actually standing for the Filipinos who were fighting against colonialization, right? Or colonization. They were fighting against imperialism, from going from Spanish colonization to U.S. imperialism, right? They knew they knew what colonization was like. Anyways, David Fagan and others joined the other side. The Bonus Army from World War I, coming home, fighting their own government. To one of the biggest ones is during the Vietnam War, right? And people joining Marxist-Leninist organizations, becoming anti-imperialists. And really doing it in a huge and profound and significant way. And then now we have an all-volunteer military, and there's less of that coming home and fighting back, right? There still is a little bit of it, but not at the levels that we've seen throughout history, right? So, this is something that I think we all are in agreement with. Like, we see firsthand what that military state is like, that apparatus is like. We've been on the inside. And honestly, I think there is like some type of agenda for the government and ruling class to give us the benefits, to kind of pacify us, to say, you know what, just shut up and you can have somewhat of a decent life. We'll give you some free healthcare. We'll give you some benefits or whatever. But they, there's little laws that show that this is kind of like where they're going at, because if you get arrested, I believe for 60 days or longer, any disability benefits you have, it gets dropped forever, right? So they don't want you to, to do whatever, right? So I'm just saying that there's a hint of where they'll benefit you only if you behave a certain way, right? So yeah, VFP, stand down. I think this is a great way to communicate to people and to say, hey, listen, there's another side of veterans that you're not hearing about.
Yeah, thank you
by the
for
way,
that.
hello,
For sure.
Chris Lombardi from earlier. Thank you. It's good to hear from you.
Yeah, we have a lot of people watching, a lot of comments going on. So thanks everybody for watching and participating. We're certainly open to any questions and comments you got. So please contribute. Yeah, so we're all here on this momentous day. There's so much going on. And I can't help but kind of be obsessed with the idea of history, these things that we've talked about already. you talked about veterans coming home, this long history, this precedence of veterans coming home and fighting against the ruling class in our own country. One of the really cool ones that I learned about recently was a guy, a Black American in the 60s named Geronimo. I can't remember his last name, who ended up joining the Black Panthers and being in the leadership in the Panthers.
Geronimo Pratt.
Geronimo Pratt, that's it. And the Panthers ended up talking to Ho Chi Minh and offering soldiers to the revolutionaries in Vietnam at the time, which is a really interesting piece of history, and something I draw a lot of inspiration from. There's just, I wish I was a better expert on what's going on right now, but it's hard not to be kind of alienated and disillusioned from it once you start to understand these cycles and patterns of history.
One thing that reminds me of, if I could touch on, is, there's also a pretty horrible aspects of it where a lot of Black New African veterans who fought in World War II or whatever would come home under segregation, under Jim Crow, under this white supremacist settler colonial society, and be killed by white supremacists, fascists, whatever, right? After, quote unquote, serving their country, right? And then, Howard Zinn Education Project has a website dedicated to like so many of these Black Americans and veterans who came home and were ultimately killed due to this type of racist system that we still live under, right? And there are veterans who've been shot by police in the past decade or two, right? Since the Iraq and Afghanistan wars have started, right? So, and this is very complicated. It's screwed up, it's messed up, but it's that's another side of, veteran history and what veterans are struggling to go through today.
Yeah.
I know the official number of veteran suicides is around 22 or 21 or something. I was recently speaking with somebody who does a lot of work with trauma, veteran trauma, and they were saying that the number is probably a lot higher. And it's just it's like it'll never be honestly reported. I'm curious if you have any insight on that.
So one of the things I learned in that department was, how do you know when someone dies in any state that person is a veteran, right? Not all states require, whenever someone dies, they have a list. Is this person a veteran? Did this person serve in the military or whatever? Not all states require that. Some do, right? And the ones that do, the VA, when they do their research, they go and look at all these records, and that helps them tell who was a veteran, who was not, right? So some states, that's hard to get that information out. Another thing is the definition of a suicide can be murky as well. And so one says only 14 states report. I mean, that's much lower than I originally thought. I don't know what the number is. There's just like, imagine trying to dig out that research for a whole entire year about the number of people who died, finding out if they're veterans, finding out if it was a suicide according to the national definition of a suicide, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the bigger point is that you could use like a big statistic that came out last year that said more people have died in the past decade, or more veterans have committed suicide in the past decade, 2009 to 2019, than had died in all of the Vietnam War, right? Which is about 58,000 people, soldiers, died in the Vietnam War on the U.S. side. And in this past decade alone, we've had more veterans commit suicide in that, right? And it's still, that number 22 veterans per day, that was big, 8 years ago? It got national attention. We got some celebrities to do 22 push-ups a day. Yay, right? Nothing's changed. That was 8 years ago. It's still happening. The wars are still going on. So what are we actually trying to do to address this epidemic, really is what it is. And yeah, and talk more about like the struggles of, and this goes for like, also I want to talk about this image of a veteran being like this white male dude who's infantry, right? And who may be racist and may turn into a fascist. Let's be real, that happens. But there are also veterans, which I believe I read recently, most troops, about, what is it, like 45% of troops are black and brown, or troops of color now, right? And that was a huge jump from 15 years ago when it was like in 33% or something like that, right? So we're having more people of color join the military. Therefore, when we get this image, why has it got to be a man? Why has it got to be white, of who a veteran is? Imagine being an indigenous woman who joined and coming back home to live on the res, right? And struggling with all those issues that the indigenous communities are suffering today, right? So, there's just, we gotta, it's very complex, and we can't just paint all these issues with one brush.
I want to thank Sarah Campbell for her shout, for her comments. I know she's the president, or I don't know if she's still the president, but she was of the Veterans for Peace chapter in Kansas City, and a very active member, individual in the community. We got I'll make a quick announcement since we're talking about it. It's kind of relevant. There's a lot of recruiters doing recruiting the gaming community, and Veterans for Peace is now trying to get in, do some counter recruitment there. So I'm reading the Instagram post. It says the military is using video games for recruitment. We want to fight back. Join us to form an online resistance team to combat it. We will be having an initial meeting on January 26th. That's right around the corner for everybody on IG. But if you can't make it, sign up and we will be in touch. So please look for Veterans for Peace on Instagram if you're a gamer, or if you know somebody who's into gaming and maybe they watch a lot of movies glorifying the military and they have a overinflated idea of what it's like to defend their country. Your children, or perhaps your husband or your wife, please have them look us up. And if you're active duty and you have questions about your service and you're thinking about how you can get out, also we have information for the VA hotline, and you can reach out to Veterans for Peace and get help from somebody who is legally trained in how to help you get out with an honorable discharge and all your benefits, like Will is talking about. So you don't have to go down the path that too many have chosen in this world.
Yeah, can I jump in real quick? I was just reflecting on what Will said. And veteran suicide, I agree. Yep, I believe that it is definitely underreported, even in those states that require that information. We just don't know if everyone is even registered or have their benefits. We know often that a lot of non-white veterans struggle with identifying themselves for a myriad of reasons. So that's also an issue for people here that do work around the housing insecure. We're finding every day that there's a veteran who doesn't have access to the VA, who doesn't have benefits coming in from their years of service. So that's one thing. And then just, I know sometimes we get kind of, stuck on just talking about suicides. What's also coming up for me, is the veterans who are still with us that are struggling in a myriad of different ways that is oftentimes connected to their service. And so when we just think about that, I think what's really coming up for me is that it's not just those who, made the ultimate decision because they couldn't deal with this. We have people who, struggle through all types of, combat stress that plays out in their, domestic relationships, in their parenthoods of their children, And so I talk to a lot of women who feel iced out of this conversation to even be heard from her experience. Many of us in whom, have experienced a long and troubled recovery around moral injury. And so I think it's important when these conversations are being had that we not just focus on those who couldn't handle this, but those who are also living with this, and we start having and opening our chests for more deeper conversations so that folks don't continue to go down that path. Because one thing, and then I'll close with this, is that it's clear that when people feel most alone, and I think about this amid COVID-19, when we're socially distant, is that we keep creating these opportunities for community, so that people feel basically less alone. So I just want to kind of leave us with that we don't just focus on those suicides, that we start reaching out to one another and creating the peer support that Miles just described. I think we have an email address. We'll show it here on the screen where people can reach out and be connected to a veteran who understands what you've been through, because most of us have deployed post 9/11, and across all of the branches, understand what it is so we can connect you with someone to talk through. So you're not alone.
I never spoke a word about my military experience when I got out until I had been out for 17 years. So my wife heard stories about my 4 years in the Marine Corps that she had never heard, because I was at home raising our son. Our son was born in 2012, and I was just the right candidate to be at home with that child. My wife made a lot more money than me and still does, and childcare in New York at the time where we lived was very expensive. So it cost less for me to quit my job and stay home than it would have cost for us to hire full-time baby care in New York. So I know a lot of people have to make different choices, but that's the choice we made. I was very blessed. We're very blessed to be in this situation. But it brought out a challenging time in my life where I had to deal with the stress that I had suppressed for 15 plus years, and raise a child without, being angry and violent at my child. So that's what brought me to Veterans for Peace. So anything can bring you to a community of peer support and people who've been through similar situations and who lead with compassion, because that's what I think that we do here, is lead with compassion. We hurt people, and so we're healing, and that's an ongoing process. So just full disclosure, not
Thank
trying
you
to
for that.
catchphrases or anything.
Yeah, that was very real, and it's really relevant because obviously see what's going on like January the 6th with the storming of the Capitol building, and we see huge numbers of veterans going out and turning to these kind of like crazy whacked out right-wing conspiracies, devolving into like Oath Keepers and 3%ers and QAnon and all these strange things can happen to you as a veteran. You come out, you're trying to make sense of why is the world so broken? Why am I so angry? Why am I having a hard time putting a living together? And then somebody from QAnon comes along and says, oh, it's the pedophiles, and you start to spin off down this thing, and you end up being used by Trump you devolve into some kind of weird fascist abomination. So it's really important that here at Veterans for Peace and other anti-war veterans organizations that we create a community, a positive, loving, peer support driven community where we can start to steer people away, provide an opportunity and a separate voice, a separate perspective to guide people away from going down these crazy paths. So I found it really helpful myself. I like the just do a random phone call once in a while. Call your homies, all your Veterans for Peace friends and your About Face friends, and just be human and make sure that we're all connecting with each other. So,
Can I add on to that?
yeah, please do.
I want to acknowledge everything that's been saying, touch on it, and then maybe push it along. So, you know, on one aspect, I want to raise awareness about what veterans go through, right? The other aspect is I don't want to, put veterans on this pedestal, because I want to acknowledge that we all participated in one of the most oppressive systems the world has ever known. The US empire, 800 military bases, endless wars across the world, more bombs being dropped every minute or whatever it is. And the resources that military industrial congressional complex siphons away from working class people here, and ultimately exploits and oppresses people overseas all around the world. So I just want to add a little bit of maybe humility, modesty. I want to. It's weird because, like I said, there's just one aspect where I want to because there are veterans who came back home and said, you know what, I was on the wrong side of history, and that I've said this plenty of times. If people didn't listen to the last live stream I was on, let me say it again. I was on the wrong side of history in the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, and trying to build a life off of this oppressive system that other people are being harmed by. But I also want to be like, the U.S. veteran history is a significant part of history, and therefore veterans can play a serious role in organizing, right? There is a problem that I've come to see, that there's a lot of leftists that just don't want to mess with veterans at all, right? They see all of us as fascists, like we're pigs, part of the police force or whatever, right? So there's deep trust issues with veterans, and that's something that we gotta really go through, right? And that's why I want to add a little bit of humility to this. Now, the thing with veterans and suicides as well, and all the PTSD, moral injury that we go through, one of the things I've really thought about a lot as one who does have all these symptoms and issues, is purpose. What is purpose? What is our purpose in life? In the military, they give us a hell of a purpose so strong that we're willing to take a bullet for our buddies next to us on our left and right side of us. That's a pretty strong purpose. Now, whether that purpose is just or not, that right now I'm not even focusing on that. I'm just saying that this ideology that is pushed down in the military, whatever branch you were, it's so strong that you're willing to sacrifice your life for something else, right? Now, when you get out of the military, how do you meet a purpose at that level, that's strong? It's hard. And I think a lot of veterans who fall into depression and all these other things with moral injury is not finding a purpose as strong or as significant as the one that we had in the military. And we want to find something just as well, right? For those of us that have reached a higher level of consciousness and have admitted our faults. To me, one of the big short essays that I've read was called Serve the People, written by Mao Zedong. And then there's a commentary under it written by someone else. It's like 2 or 3 pages. And it really hits the bill because it was significant to me, because I don't know about you, but as a paratrooper, it was constantly, you're serving the people, you're serving the people, you're serving the people. You're providing a service to the American people and the world. And coming home, going through all this crap, and then a comrade of mine handing me this piece, serve the people. It really, okay, you know what? Now I know what serving the people is, or I have a better idea of what that might entail, because I know when we were in the military, we weren't serving the people. We were serving the corporations, the weapons manufacturers, the class enemies in power like Biden and Trump and Obama and Bush and Clinton and so on and so forth. We were serving these academics and think tanks that reproduce these capitalist and fascist propaganda to justify higher military budgets and spending and capitalism and exploitation and all this. So with all that said, also acknowledging that 10%, roughly 10% of the US population are made up of veterans. And we are people who have skills that are practical in leftist organizations and organizing. Community self-defense. We could really transfer our skills into something that is meaningful and gives us purpose and is just, where we're actually on the side of the people, in community self-defense, and a whole wide range of other ways that we could be organizing. The knowledge that we've attained. Yeah, the thing is, a lot of people think veterans are just stupid. We don't have brains. We can't think on our own. In some cases, yes. But there are things that we have learned as far as like working together, working as a team, understanding this, working cooperatively, the benefits of that, being a little bit more disciplined than the average person. We know what it's like to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and do 4 miles a run 5 days a week for years. There's things that we can contribute to in a practical way on leftist organizing. But you know what? We also have to prove ourselves to the people, because like I said, we were on the wrong side of history. So we have a lot of making up to do, but that gives us purpose, just as strong, if not stronger, than the one that was given to us while we were wearing the uniform, right? And so, yeah, so, humility, taking veterans down from a pedestal, but also acknowledging the issues that veterans go through, redefining what purpose means, and then having a significant impact in the organizations that we organize in, right? And this is, to me, sounds like a pretty solid, concrete way to move forward. And just starting from there, it can go in a lot of different beneficial ways for the majority of people in this country and around the world.
Wah, wah, wah. Air horn. That's what I'm talking about. That's the clip we needed.
It sounds wonderful, Will. Now, what we need from that, what I want from that, is to see Will Griffin running for senator, or Will Griffin running for Congress. I say that because I believe that all parts of the system have to be attacked and addressed in order for it to be changed. So, like, I believe in the organizing power, and I believe in organizing outside of the system, because the system is built to take away that power to change it. But if you overwhelm it with AOCs, then you know what I'm saying, then you can create change, right? So that's my argument to that. Is what you're saying needs to be an influx of young people into positions of power, or what we can see as positions of power, so that there can be change, systemic change. No, too liberal, fruity.
To be real, I completely disagree with that strategy, and I would ask, when has that ever happened? Show me a society that has influxed all of these politicians and completely changed society. The examples that I can think of is when you do elect a president into a country that is socialist, and it's saying, we're going to move this country to socialism. That president gets assassinated, gets overthrown. There's a coup d'etat, because there's the state apparatus that is still beholden to that capitalist class that is in power. That's why it's a class struggle. You have to we live in a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, right? And that's why a lot of socialists say we want a dictatorship of the proletariat. As Kwame Ture said, there can be only two societies at this point in human history. One where a minority of people own all of the resources, or another where the majority of people own all of the resources. One is called capitalism, and one is called socialism.
I agree with you. So, barring a bloody revolution, how do we move from capitalism into socialism? like within the span of a generation, being a person who believes all things are possible, which is what I am. How do we you're clearly a thinker. You clearly think on these things a lot. How do we move our generation into socialism?
Well, you know what? I actually just wrote a piece that was published in Hampton Institute, the Hampton think tank. It was called Liberal Anti-Imperialism and Militant Anti-Imperialism, a Demarcation, right? And I feel like that kind of highlights what we're talking about, these strategies to oppose, combat, fight, overthrow imperialism, also known as capitalism, a different stage of capitalism. Now, you know, I obviously in that article, I'm advocating for militant anti-imperialism, but I also acknowledge not everyone has to be a militant. But let's be real. You know, if you do an internet search, militant nonviolence, guess whose name pops up? We just celebrated him a few days ago. Martin Luther King Jr., right? Dr. King promoted militant nonviolence. And you know what? The idea for this article actually came from our last conversation when someone had asked, what does militant mean? And that was months ago. And ever since, I've really thought about that, because it has helped me deal with a lot of the things that I've been dealing with in these peace and anti-war spaces, where people are liberal anti-imperialists, right? So what can I, if you don't mind, I'll go over a couple of points that I write in that article. So one point is liberal I think the main thing is liberal anti-imperialists funnel all of that energy right back into elections, right? I was at Standing Rock. What did they do in the end? They got Tulsi Gabbard and all these people to be like, we're not going to do anything militant. We're going to hold hands and do a solidarity march. Pacifying the entire, when you had thousands of veterans there saying like, I'm willing to die today for this cause, right? And then you just totally pacify that energy. So, liberal anti-imperialists funnel all of that energy and organizing back into electoral politics. When militant anti-imperialist has more of a diversity of tactics, willing to go outside of these institutions of the state, right? The second thing is obviously like nonviolence as a principle or nonviolence as a tactic. Kwame Ture speaks about this. For people listening, go to YouTube, type in Kwame Ture's speech, find the one that's over an hour long, listen to the whole thing. It is amazing. It is one of the best speeches on YouTube. Obviously, Kwame Ture was previously known as Stokely Carmichael, huge in the Black Power movement in the 60s and 70s, stood for revolutionary organizations in countries and nations in Africa, so on and so forth. Amazing thinker, speaker, whatever, right? And he made the difference. He said nonviolence is a tactic. And there's people that made the mistake, like Dr. King, which he talks about in the video, of making nonviolence a principle. And really, I see liberal anti-imperialists become dogmatic in this nonviolence principle thing, where listen, I was at an anti-war conference before, and there was one, I would say a militant anti-imperialist who was giving a presentation, and they were like, yeah, we support these armed struggles against imperialism in the Philippines or whatever, right? Someone else who was a liberal anti-imperialist was supposed to speak later on that day, and they were like, I'm leaving. I can't have anything to do with this conference anymore, right? So it's these liberal anti-imperialists who are really the dogmatic ones, and that won't even allow a discussion of tactics to be thrown on the table. It just has to. So, and then one of the points I make in the article about this is like, you don't have to become militant yourself. Just don't condemn the ones that are willing to fight imperialism by picking up the gun or doing something a little bit more militant. We can't condemn those people. And in fact, it harms the entire anti-imperialist movement, whether in this country or around the world. I'll end here with one last point. The capitalist state, elections, the military, the Congress, liberal anti-imperialists see the capitalist state as a neutral body of power that can be won over. We can vote our way out of this stuff, right? Militant anti-imperialists should understand that the capitalist state is not neutral. And as Lenin said in his book, you should read it, State and Revolution, and this history has proven what Lenin says, is that the capitalist state is tied by 1,000 threads to the ruling class. So let's talk about the shareholders and the executive officers of Lockheed Martin, of Boeing, of Amazon, whatever t-shirt companies that are big in this country, or of Apple. These are the people that the capitalist state serve, and there's no way to sever that. There's no way to sever that. The capitalist state has to be smashed, and a new state has to be rebuilt in the image of the working class, right? So like in a capitalist state, we have a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. If we were on a desert island, 101, okay, I don't know how many people are watching this. All of us are on a desert island. Miles, I'm going to pick on you. Miles, you have all the resources on the island. One person. The rest of us, let's say 99 of us, we're about to starve. How long is that system going to last on that island? Really, how long do you think that system is going to last?
Well, I'm gonna be giving. I'm gonna open up my doors and tell people they can have it, because I'm not gonna be eaten alive or killed. You know what
Okay,
I'm saying?
so
So
Jeff
I know where
Bezos
this
is on
goes.
the
Yeah,
island. Jeff Bezos is on the island. Jeff Bezos has all the resources. We're
right.
starving, right? That system's not going to last 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, doesn't
And
work.
but what does Jeff Bezos do? He hires 5 other dudes, puts weapons in their hands, and says, "Hey, I'll give you some huge portions of these resources, give you a place to live, etc. You just got to protect all of this stuff from the 95 other people on the island." Right? So that's essentially the state. Right? So what happens when we protest? The police come in. What happens when the police fail? The military comes in, the National Guard. If the National Guard fails, the active duty will most certainly come in. And we saw Trump do that at the border or whatever, right? So, I mean, I think that's important to understand, that the capitalist state is not neutral. There's no time in history that has ever been won over. And I wish there was a different way, but I'm going according with what history has shown us with class struggle, essentially.
My argument for you, and I agree with you. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. I argue that the structure is kept in place not so much by the state, but more so by the people who believe that they can enter that ruling class. The status quo keeps it empowers the state. It's the reason that you can have crazy conspiracy theorists try to storm the Capitol storm the Capitol without a clear plan of what they were going to do had they caught anybody. No demands or anything, no plans for a government, and yet what you're talking about is what's needed. But then how does it happen in a way that's that's workable, that we can live through? Or can we not? Can we not live through it? I know you're not calling for it, but do you foresee a time that we can't live through to get to the place that we need to go?
So, I mean, now we're going into theory and strategy, right? And a lot of leftists disagree on these types of things, but ultimately we all agree. A true leftist agree. I should say revolutionary. That's the whole point of having a revolution, is to overturn society. Yeah, it's going to have to be taken by force. It's not, that's the ultimate thing here. Yeah, one day the Capitol is going to be stormed. No way in the way that the fascists did. We already know what black and brown protests look like at the Capitol versus these fascists and white supremacists freely walking in and taking pictures with the pigs. So I mean, it's not all about going head on, right? We got to raise the consciousness of the people here at home. We've got to get them to to understand the conditions and what's possible on the other side of the horizon. But you're right. This is what the ruling class has done. They've pacified this energy, this anger that the working class has of society by two main things. One is concessions, right? Veterans benefits. Here's a little breadcrumbs. Go home and be nice, right? Just giving us a couple of things, which we get more things in this country than we do, say, in Bangladesh or anywhere else in the third world, right? The second thing is ideology, the American dream. If you work hard enough, you can go up the social mobility ladder. You can become a millionaire. You can become a celebrity. You can become a politician. You can become a president, right? So that also helps subdue and pacify all of this anger and all of the suffering that we have under capitalism, alienation, isolation, etc., right? But this is the thing about class. Class transcends national boundaries, right? Because what we often do in this country is we will fight for something that benefits the working class in the US, but puts the working class in other countries, especially the third world, at a disadvantage, right? And there's a way where we can uplift all of the working class around the world. That's going to be hard with all this this liberal ideology of individualism, becoming famous, becoming powerful, becoming rich, tied in with, you know what? I'm not really down for any like true struggle because I got a show on Netflix that just came out tonight, and I want to eat some popcorn with my bae and just chill out. You know what I'm saying? So when you have those options available, it's a lot easier to subdue people. And the last point I'll make is, listen, Rosa Luxemburg had it right 100 years ago. Socialism or barbarism? Are we not living in a barbaric state of affairs today? Climate change is destroying everything. The pandemic is running loose. We have a healthcare system under the rules of capitalism that can't even serve the people properly, even though we have the technology available for people. Look at the racism, the settler colonialism, the 500 years of genocidal policies against indigenous people, and now genocidal policies against the Black and New African nation. Let alone the endless wars. We don't even see when they're like, check, barbarism. So do we want to continue living this, or do we want to like start thinking deeply about how we can do this? So one of the things, I'll end with this. One of the things I'm doing now personally is like I'm studying deeply into theory, revolutionary history, to really think about this in a more concise way, because we've got enough action going on. We don't. Kwame Ture in his speech, again, this is an amazing speech. He's like, unity in action, mobilizing people, easy. We can do that all day long. Unity in thought, now that's where it becomes a struggle. And that's especially hard in this United States of America, where from the day we're born, it's all individualism. Whatever you can do, this is your toy. Don't let your friends play with it. This is yours. Blah blah blah. So it already like destroys the idea of community, which is how humans evolved in the first place. So, anyways, I feel like I'm ranting now.
Nah, you did great. And I'm sorry, Mike, you touched on some great points, and you talked about the short attention span problem, which is a horrible problem taking place in America right now. It's like a phenomena. And it seems to be growing and expanding. I just wanted to salute you for what you did today. Thank you. And folks in the chat room, thank you for joining us. This is an open, safe space for conversation and dialogue, because without conversation, you can't open your mind, you can't learn, you can't begin to grow. That's how we get new information, is by having open conversations. So when we allow conversation to flourish, you know what I'm saying? When we foster conversation, we allow the imagination to flourish. So please, if you joined late, please go back and watch the whole show. Will Griffin, our guest today, is the founder of the Peace Report. He is he's a veteran. He's a combat veteran, and he's a person who lived firsthand all the things that he spoke about from the supporting imperialism to the disillusionment, and now to the education of himself and his community. So I thank you for being here with us today. I think we have at least one announcement to make. On Friday, we're hosting a special episode of Stand Down. I can read it. I can read the webinar registration. There's a registration page on our Veterans for Peace page website, which says it's a 2-hour program with speakers and music and a roundtable discussion focused on remembering Dr. King's legacy to stand up and organize for a better today and tomorrow. Not just on his birthday, but every day. So similar to what we talked about today, seeing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as more than just the "I have a dream" speech. There's beyond the war, and we're going to go beyond the dream on Friday. So I hope you join us. I hope you register for the event and tune in. And yeah, Will, man, I'm really honored that you came back and shared time with us. And I'm looking forward to having you back on the show in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate y'all having this conversation. And you know what? As someone who's been in VFP for a few years, I especially appreciate having conversations like this now. So thank you. And it was great to speak with you, Miss Natasha.
You too. It was good to hear from you. You touched on so many good points. So we'll just let that percolate. Appreciate you for being here.
And thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks everyone. A lot of great threads. I could talk about this for the next 2 hours, but we've gone for a little bit over an hour now. And man, I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, you summed it up, killed it. It's awesome. Lots of good clips here that we can work with.
He brought it to life. He brought truth to life. Yeah, we're gonna flip. We're gonna revolutionize our metaphors, our use of language. I love you, Mike.
Love you all too. Thank you.
Love you, Natasha.
All right, thanks, y'all.
All right, peace.